everybody, my name is Samantha Simpson and I am a staff biologist at Mote Marine Laboratory in the Florida Keys. I'm going to talk with you today about our offshore coral nurseries. For those of you who have never heard of or visited our offshore coral nurseries, there will be an opportunity for some virtual exploration during a behind-the-scenes video showing you what it's like to work with coral underwater. You can also find activities to go along with this lesson on our Google Classroom. If you haven't already, please go ahead and sign up at classroom.google.com using our classroom code shown on the screen right now. We want you to be able to see this material, so please reach out to keyseducation@mote.org if you're having any issues accessing it. Although there are no required materials for this lesson, feel free to grab a pen, pencil, and notebook if you'd like to take notes as you follow along to jot down some of the things that you're hearing or seeing. You may also want to keep a mask and fins nearby, as this lesson might inspire you to go swimming afterwards. Thank you all for choosing to learn about the topic of offshore coral nurseries. It is my goal, by the end of this presentation, for you to walk away having met the following learning objectives. Discover what an in-situ coral nursery is. Understand how coral nurseries restore coral reefs. And identify 3 functions in-situ coral nurseries have for scientists. As you may have learned in last week's coral anatomy lesson, coral is an animal, which means it lives and grows. Coral nurseries are places we not only keep coral alive, but actively grow more of it. There are 2 ways to grow coral: away from its natural location, known as ex situ, and in its natural location, known as in situ. Today, I will be focusing on how my team at Mote Marine Laboratory grows coral in situ, or in the water. Mote coral nurseries are in a depth of around 30 feet. We grow coral on structures called coral trees. These trees are kept neutrally buoyant by buoys and an anchor in the sand. The coral hangs from tree branches by monofilament loops. Sometimes we also have the coral mounted to the arms of the tree on things that we call pucks. To take a closer look, this is what coral looks like on a puck. You can tell the coral is growing happy and healthy because the polyps are nice and fat. There are many advantages of growing coral in situ nurseries. The coral tree design allows for coral to grow lifted off the ocean floor. This prevents the coral from being covered in sand, removes it from predators like snails, and brings it closer to the sun for more nutrients and gives it better water flow. All of these things result in increased coral growth. In situ growth also requires less system maintenance and algae mitigation. There is more space to work with when you are growing coral in the ocean. You'll notice we stagger monofilament lengths, so one coral tree can grow 100 corals. The Lou Key Nursery, just over 10 years old, is Mote Marine Lab's first offshore coral nursery. You'll notice this location relative to our Summerland IC2R3 campus. The Lou Key Nursery contains 175 coral trees about and is 0.9 acres. It has around 10,700 fragments of coral and adding up to 465,000 centimeters of coral total linear extension. Our Sand Key Nursery is a bit smaller and closer to Key West. It contains around 75 trees and is a half an acre. It has about 6,500 fragments of coral, which add up to 315,000 centimeters total linear extension of coral. Combined, our nurseries have 250 trees, 17,000 fragments of coral, which adds up to 750,000 centimeters in total linear extension. Our nurseries serve a few different functions for us. They not only help to grow coral, but we use them for reef restoration and science as well. To grow more corals, we practice something called fragging. You'll see in the top picture, one of the divers is using a pair of cutters to make more pieces of coral out of a larger piece of coral. We collect all of those pieces of coral in a basket, and then we rehang them onto the trees. You'll notice the bottom right corner is a picture of the tools we use and some recently hung up corals on a coral tree. Once we frag the corals and put them on a tree, they grow larger, and we are able to cut more corals down and continue the process growing our corals until it's time to outplant them. If we're not making more of our corals or using them to outplant, we're using them for science. We do experimentation in our nurseries that teach us how corals grow, reproduce, or how they're genetically composed. We also donate some of our corals for scientific collaboration with other organizations or institutions. In these photos, you'll notice divers working on trees and block nurseries specifically designed for experimentation within the nursery. We restore coral reefs through a process called outplanting. Outplanting is when we harvest corals from our nurseries and transport them to a reef site where they will be attached by Mote Marine Lab divers and then continue to grow. In the top right photo, a Mote diver hands off a basket full of staghorn coral to another Mote diver. In the bottom right photo shows what it looks like when staghorn coral is outplanted on a reef and gives an idea of how large coral fragments are when they are outplanted. The graphic to the right shows a map of the Lower Keys with Big Pine to the right and Key West to the left. The circles in the water show reef sites Mote is permitted to outplant corals on. Since the year 2006, Mote Marine Lab has outplanted corals from our Insitu coral nurseries to 25 reef sites in the Florida Keys. This graphic shows the number of staghorn coral outplanted over the past 10 years, from 2009 until 2019. Mote Marine Lab has planted over 78,000 coral. You'll notice the highest number has been this past year in 2019, with 23,000 staghorn coral outplanted on the Florida Reef Tract. To give an idea of how our coral nurseries aid reef restoration, I'm going to take you through a time series that shows our coral's growth from the time it's outplanted until 11 months of growing on the reef. This first picture was taken right after the staghorn coral was harvested from a Mote Marine Lab Insitu nursery and outplanted on a reef. Notice the size of these 5 corals, and keep in mind their sizes relative to the blue sponge and the pinkish-colored massive starlit coral to the right side of the picture. At 1 month on the reef, you'll notice not too much has gone on. However, the coral has started to grow over the cable tie that once held it to the nail and onto the reef substrate itself. Five months later, we're noticing a lot more growth on this coral. You can see the smaller pink coral is almost invisible now because of the growth of the staghorn Reaching our 7-month point, these same 5 corals are much larger, have branched out, and fused together, but can still be recognized by the remnants of the blue sponge in the bottom right corner. Now, what does this mean for us? We just watched as 5 corals grown in a Mote marine nursery were transported to a reef site, grew, and thrived. However, it is not just those 5 corals. As we learned in an earlier slide, Mote Marine Lab outplants tens of thousands of staghorn corals from our offshore nurseries. Our research done by monitoring every coral shows that more than 95% of outplanted coral survive after 1 year. These survival rates are very high. Would you like to visualize some of the things I've talked about from the perspective of a Mote Marine Lab scientific diver? Come behind the scenes tomorrow to join us for a peek into what it's like to grow coral underwater. If you haven't already, please go ahead and sign up for our Google Classroom using the class code showed on the screen. We'd love it if you'd follow us on our Facebook and Instagram at Protect Our Reefs to check out all the cool content we've got coming for you guys. Thank you so much to NOAA Restoration Center Award. And thank you for listening to our lesson on Insitu coral nurseries.